So today, the Republicans revealed some of the key points in the HEALS Act, which is their version of the HEROES Act that the Democrats passed back in May. In today's video, I'll go over what is most likely to get passed soon and what is probably going to need some more debate, and also what is not even mentioned in the HEALS Act coming up. Hello everyone, my name is Matt Ragudo and I help individuals reach their ideal retirement through financial planning. And in this video, I'm going to cover the HEALS Act, which was introduced today. In the first part of this video, I'll talk about what I believe will have relatively easy bipartisan support, and I'll go down from there to what is not even mentioned in the Republican version of the next CARES Act. All right, so first we have the stimulus check. Now, most of you folks know this, but the stimulus check was finally agreed on earlier this week and the beginning and the later parts of last week, where they agreed that the $1,200 amount is good, as well as the income limitations for those Americans who are qualified or eligible for it. And that remains at $75,000 per individual in income for the last calendar year of 2019. So if you have made less than $75,000 as an individual, $150,000 as a couple married filing jointly, then you again are eligible for the $1,200. Now, what's different this time is they've decided to cover adult dependents the same way they cover regular dependents. So that $500 extra you get if you have children under the age of 18, that will be extended now to any adult dependents who you claim on your tax return. Now, really what this means is there'll be additional funds going out to Americans, which is, of course, very important, especially now if you have children. And we'll go into more on why that's going to be very important as I get through the list. The next thing that is going to be or going to have bipartisan support is the next round of PPP loans, or SBA Payroll Protection Program loans. And they've changed the provisions, which are going to make the Democrats probably happier, primarily because their restrictions are 300 employees or less, so no big corporations. And you have to have lost at least 50% of your sales to qualify. And so this will really help those who are actually hurting, and not those who are just trying to line their pockets with extra money in case something happens. So this will help those who are truly hurting. And I do know a lot of businesses, at least where I am, that are really hurting, especially because they are unable to open. They're still suffering huge losses as, rent, mortgage, utilities, all of those things have to be paid whether or not you're, selling anything. So it does help those who are really suffering, and I believe that it'll get bipartisan support and should be passed relatively easy when it reaches the House. Now, the third hot topic that I believe will pass relatively soon, mainly because of the amount of people it affects, but will require a lot of debate, is the unemployment. So unemployment, as far as the Republican proposal, says that for the next 2 months, they're going to provide a $200 federal boost. After those 2 months are over, they will do a calculation of 70% of your lost wages and provide up to $500 a week for you as an unemployment payment. Now, during the next 2 months, though, a $400 loss on everyone's unemployment is $1,600 a month. And if you're a married couple, that's going to be $3,200 per month, which is really going to hurt a lot of Americans, especially if the stimulus check, is going to be $2,400. Now, it's probably not going to get bipartisan support, the unemployment part. The stimulus check most likely will, but the bipartisan support for the unemployment, right now, I think they're going to have to negotiate a little bit higher, maybe start off at the 500 or maybe a 400 amount, and then from there to implement the 70% after 2 months. But as far as I'm concerned, that will probably take the most negotiation, just because of how many people it's going to affect, and also the amount of money and all the, I guess you could say, all their reasoning for it, like disincentivizing going back to work versus making people homeless. There's viable perspectives from both sides. So that's one thing that I think will most likely take the most effort in this next bill. Now, the fourth thing I wanted to talk about was liability protection for schools, hospitals, and employers. As an employer, I do think that it is necessary to protect it does not protect gross negligence or intentional harm. So like if I were to open up my place and intentionally, put sick people with healthy people just for fun, that would be a lawsuit. If I don't properly set up the 6 feet boundaries, make it known that we are practicing social distancing, making hand sanitizers readily available, that is also gross negligence, so that I should be punished for. But if someone comes into my office without a mask on and starts sneezing on everybody, and then later on other, customers in my office were to sue me, I think that would require some kind of protection as far as liability goes, because then in my head, I don't want to even open my office. And to be 100% transparent, ever since the pandemic began, I don't meet with clients at all. I do 100% of my business from my living room. As you can see, is my kitchen back there and my pantry. Primarily because I don't want to put anyone in danger, especially any one of my clients, because I primarily work with seniors, who is a very high risk population. So I do all my consulting through video and through the phone. So for me, if I was a restaurant, I would have gone out of business because I can't remotely send you food. But for myself, I'm fortunate I don't have to worry about that. So I believe the liability protections are important, but I don't know how the Democrats are going to feel, because they're more interested in protecting the consumers, the patients, and the employees. So they're going to draft more protections on their side, protecting them from malpractice on the employer, hospital, school side. So with that said, that's going to be a probably longer debated topic. They do have some time for that though, because whatever they agree on will most likely backdate all the way to December of 2019 to protect and to blanket all of the cases that are currently in the works or currently in court now. Now, some of the minor things that the bill did propose is tax credits and tax deductions for certain things, like for small businesses or for businesses, you can deduct 100% of the meals, which I honestly don't think is that big of a deal. As a sole proprietor, that they changed the tax deductions, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, where we could only deduct half of the meal, and that I don't know why they chose to do it that way, but that's the way it's been done, and I don't think it's going to help, especially since those meals are most likely for business purposes, and I don't think we should be having meals business, in person anymore, especially since we can just have a meal over Zoom. We can both order Uber Eats or something and then enjoy a meal in the comfort of our own office, not having to talk with each other face to face at some restaurants. So I don't think that's a good use of funds or tax credits or deductions. They also added in extra deductions and credits for PPE, for maybe remodeling your store or your office so that you can adhere to the guidelines. I think that's great. I also don't know how they're going to accurately track those, because most times if you're making any kind of business expense, it's already tax deductible. I guess maybe credit wise, it's a different story. If you get a tax credit versus a tax deduction, it's a huge difference. But I'm not sure where they're going to draw those lines, and that might take even longer. And the expense on that and the fraud on that is, I don't want to begin to figure out what the tax and the CPAs are going to do. I wonder what Brian Kim is going to do, right? Anyway, that kind of concludes what they propose. So what is missing from their act? There's a lot missing, right? $1 trillion from the Republican proposal versus the $3 trillion on the Democrats' HEROES Act. So one of the major things that's missing is the mortgage protection. So prior in the CARES Act, we had a lot of protection against eviction, foreclosure. That is absent from this bill. Most likely the Democrats are going to try and get that put into this proposal, mainly because there's about 32% of Americans who are at risk of foreclosure if unemployment goes down, if the stimulus check isn't enough. So they'll probably fight for that. Also, the Republican bill did not help at all state and local governments. No money was brought in or added to the state and local governments fund. Now, the Republicans are saying that they still have money in the state and local funds from the first CARES Act. So why not just use that money? And that's a valid response. I think maybe at the state and local levels there's not enough information going out, so do reach out to your local and state government for any kind of federal assistance that's currently available, because they have increased those reserves or funds for your state and local government. So please check that out and see if you can get anything right now, especially for housing, food, and utility assistance. And I'll leave some links down below for my folks out in Hawaii, if there's anything that I think might be a good idea for them to check out, especially during this time. Now, the last thing and an unfortunate thing, especially for my family, is the student loans. 0% interest was not included or not even spoke of at all. And what that is up until September 30th, anyone who has a student loan does not have to pay any interest on it, and they don't have to make any payments on it. I'm not sure how much this is costing the government, but a lot of people who are out of a job now probably have student loans and probably can't afford to pick back up those payments. So I would feel that they should extend this. And if it's not that big of a budget deal, then I think it should be passed where they can extend the zero interest at least until the end of the year, especially if they are going to pull back from the unemployment and pull back from all these other housing and mortgage protection. Because I don't know how you can, if your student loan debtor is trying to get you to pay your student loan payment, but then again your house payments also due and your income went down because of the unemployment decrease that happened from the federal boost. Now in Hawaii, and I'll kind of end it with like how we are here in Hawaii. Hawaii's unemployment per week payment is somewhere around $600 a week. So the federal boost does boost it up to about $1,200 a week per person. So in Hawaii, that's actually not that much money. $4,800 a month for a person is about $50,000 a year, and you can't make it on $50,000 a year in Hawaii if you have a home. You definitely can't make it if you have a family. So it's really going to hurt, and most people now are just tapping into savings because, as you know, Hawaii is based off of tourism, so our tourism is completely shut down. All of my friends that work at the hotels, they're all shut down, they're furloughed. And if this continues, I don't know how the hotels are going to continue paying for their medical insurance. So if you're at a point right now where you're unsure about your medical insurance, that's what I specialize in. Also, if you need help with like figuring out what the provisions are to take out money from your 401k, if you really need to, I don't like to, you can check a video on what I talk about in the 401k and how to save money or how to access the money on your 401k. You can check that out too. But please check back here for additional resources when time comes. I will definitely be looking to provide any kind of resources I can, especially now for those of you folks in Hawaii, and if it's applicable all over the US. And I hope you guys have a great and happy day. And by the way, Hurricane Douglas didn't do anything yesterday, so we're very fortunate. We're very blessed that nothing happened to us. The entire state actually just flew right above us and just made it really muggy and not very windy. In fact, it's more windy today. As you can see, the curtain flew, and it's really windy right now. So anyway, if you folks want any more topics covered about financial planning, health insurance, the healthcare marketplace, you can leave a comment down below. If you folks want to check out a video about 401k and the hardship withdrawal, you can go check that out. Or anything else that I produce, you can check that out in a video as well on the screen. You guys have a great and magical day, and I'll see you in the next one.